Anyway, moving on. Why do we lie? Why is it something that people always do? Right now, there is someone lying about something. The older I've gotten, the more it's started to puzzle me. Now, I'm guilty of lying myself, of course, we all are. But it's an ongoing question that I keep having. When I was little, I learned that I could actually get away with lying sometimes, when it was something trivial, you know. I think a decision that a child makes when they're 6 or 7 probably isn't going to dictate the rest of their life. But I did learn as I got older that it is actually much more stressful and creates a lot more problems if someone lies. Because if you are honest 100% of the time, hypothetically, then you never have to cover your tracks, you never have to keep tabs of what lie you've told to who, and this became much more apparent to me later in life. One show back in the day that illustrated this very, very well is Fawlty Towers. Some of you will know it, some of you won't know it, and the ones that know it will know exactly what I'm talking about, where in an attempt to save face, even with all the good intentions, in the end, the whole comedy is covering up for lies and going to drastic measures to make sure that people don't find out about these lies, and it inevitably doesn't work. But obviously that's fiction. But in real life, the same applies, I've learned. So, sticking to the truth, it saves time and stress, and in the long term, it's going to serve you better to, you know, speak the honest truth to whoever, whether it's your boyfriend, girlfriend, your friend, your boss, some official or something. It's always better to tell the truth because the truth will come out eventually. It could be weeks, it could be years. But at some point, your lie will become apparent. Maybe you had too many loose ends in that story or something, you know? So, as a default state, I think it's much, much better to just tell the truth. The reason I'm making this now is because there was something that happened recently where someone accused me of something and I denied it. And the thing that they accused me of, I didn't do. And they didn't have to believe me. There was also no way I could prove this. But I just said, like, you don't have to believe me. But that's the truth, I swear. And within a few hours, the truth came out. And in that moment, I was like, there is so much to this little interaction that I just had with this person. Because now, even though I don't know this person very well, that's 100% truth. You know? So they are going to be more likely to believe me in future, and I don't have to, you know, convince that one person of anything. Because, you know, you accused me once, and it was not a lie. So now I am more believable. I am more trustworthy, therefore. However, if I had lied, and the truth had come out, that person is never going to trust me again, or at the very least they're going to have doubts about trusting me. My reputation is going to be tarnished. And that kind of applies to all of this. No one wants to have a bad reputation. Because a bad reputation is very, very difficult to fix. And even if someone doesn't like the truth that they're hearing, at least it's the truth. A difficult truth is better to hear than a wonderful lie, or whatever, you know, there's an expression like that. And I maintain that's true. You know, if you go to a doctor to be diagnosed for some horrible disease, even though you're going to be given bad news, you would prefer that to be the truth and for them to say, yeah, everything's fine, you can go home, and then you know, you're done in a week. That's obviously an extreme example of what I'm talking about, but that applies to everything. And the older I get, the more I realize that that's true. I also harbor deep frustration for people that not only lie to others, but also lie to themselves. You know, they convince themselves of their own lies, their own covering up for something, you know, and if you want to lie to yourself in your own head, then that's fine. But that's never the case. That always ends up affecting other people. And so if someone, this does not apply to me at all, but I've known people that this does apply to, many actually, alarmingly many people who, like, I know you are bullshitting me. I know. It's not a feeling. I know for sure, because I know you, that you're lying. But they will cover up that lie, and then that has to then become part of their life. That little lie. You know, there's only so much brain power that a human being has. So the more that is used covering up these lies, convincing yourself of this lie, and then living with that, and then changing like your personality and your behavior based on that lie that you've convinced yourself of, must be so exhausting. And I genuinely feel sympathy for people like this. And I speak from experience, like I said. And I know the truth can be painful. I know it can be uncomfortable. You may want to keep up appearances or something, but it's going to be way more exhausting to keep up false pretenses than to just be honest with yourself and just hold your hands up and go, okay, yeah, maybe I'm not perfect. You know, I don't think that's a crazy prospect, but to some people it is impossible. You know, compulsive liars, they live their life this way, and I sympathize to an extent in that it must be really difficult to live your life that way. I do not sympathize, however, because you're lying and manipulating the truth at best, and that affects other people. So that's not fair. Again, if you want to live in your own fantasy world, in your own head, and keep it there, then you go ahead. I can't stop you from doing that. No one can. But when your decisions about obfuscating the truth genuinely have a knock-on effect on someone else, and that person knows that you're lying, tells you to your face, I know you are lying, stop lying to me, and you keep doing it, that is unexcusable. That I find thoroughly unacceptable and infuriating. Because again, you're just making your life more difficult, and therefore everyone else's life more difficult. I think these people, these like compulsive liars, or not necessarily compulsive liars, but people who knowingly manipulate the truth for a particular narrative, they don't know that everyone else knows that they're lying, because they've convinced themselves so hard that it's the truth that it isn't a lie anymore in their mind, you know? And that is crazy. And that is like a personality trait. I sympathize, but you don't have to be this way. That's the point. And it's incredibly frustrating. I don't know if this comes from childhood, because like I said, when I was a child, I did lie. I think all kids do. But I'm not saying, you know, I'm so wonderful because of realizing this. I did realize this, and certain other people didn't, it seems. What a way to live your life. So there is a theory that lying was an evolutionary tool that has developed throughout humanity. Yeah, I mean, in a life or death situation, I think maybe lying could be excused if it means your survival. You know, if you're being held captive and you're able to lie your way out of that situation, then you go ahead. That's fine. That's entirely different. So I understand it on a evolutionary human survival level. I'm not completely ignorant to that. But that's, you know, an extreme circumstance and really not what I'm talking about. I just wanted to mention that because that is a factor, but not a huge one. White lies are another thing that we say to protect someone's feelings. You know, does this dress look good on me? Yes, it looks wonderful, even though you look like a rotting pig. Over the years, I have stopped using white lies because I feel like a bit of a hypocrite. If I'm not willing to lie overall, then I'm not comfortable giving someone a white lie. So in that example, does this dress look good on me? I'm going to say what I think. If it does, then I'll say, yeah, it looks wonderful. If it doesn't, I'll say in a slightly more polite way, no, it doesn't match your skin tone or something. Well, that may not be the reason. It might just be a horrible dress, in my opinion. But again, that's just my opinion, right? it's almost like a grey lie, if that's even a thing. I guess I've just invented that term, unless it previously existed. Like I said, it. I'm not going to say, yes, you look wonderful, when I don't think you do. What I will do is say, no, but there's a reason for it. It may not be the exact reason, but I'm not going to lie to someone and say that they look great when they don't. Does that make me an asshole? Maybe. But I'd rather be branded an asshole than a liar. People who know me well, people that have known me for decades, know this about me. And I think they will ask a question knowing that they might not like the answer they hear. I'll have to ask people who know me, actually, but I get that feeling, you know, because I've repeatedly been very blunt with people, not in a rude way, just in a very matter-of-fact, surface-level thing, because I can't be bothered to try to remember these things that I've made up. You know, I can't do it. It's too taxing on my mind. So if a friend asks me, hey, I've got this situation with my boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever, what do you think? I'm going to be straight up honest. And as impartial as I can be, obviously having an invested interest in my friend. But overall, I will look at the situation, at least the situation from their side, and go, yeah, I think you're right in feeling the way you do, or you're completely wrong, depending on the context, you know? There's no point in someone asking for my honest opinion and then me not giving my straight-up honest opinion. It's a waste of breath, so why would I bother doing that? If someone shows me a song they've made, for example, the same applies. I'm never going to say, yeah, this is the best thing I've ever heard, because the chances are it's not going to be. I have listened to quite a lot of music in my life. But if there's something that's sticking out to me, or, you know, it's too long, or the snare drum sounds like crap, I'm going to tell them. Because as someone who's made music in the past, I have really valued when someone says, yeah, it's like 95% there, but there's this one little thing that you could change that would help it. And then I go, thank you, that didn't occur to me. I flip it around the other way. Like, I would expect someone who cared to tell me, yeah, this is good, but this bit sucks. Whereas someone who either doesn't care or maybe is afraid to be honest with me will say, no, it's totally perfect, wouldn't change a thing. And whenever someone says that, that's when I start questioning myself, how good the song is. So I'm like, there's no possible way this is perfect as it is. No song is ever really finished. No painting is ever really finished. It's just abandoned, right? So you could work on a song for the rest of your life. So if someone says to me, yeah, it's fine, it's all good, then I'll go to someone else and get their opinion, because I don't believe that. I don't believe their opinion. It's not that I don't trust them, I just feel like they're trying to protect my feelings in that situation, right? Which is not what I asked you to do. I asked for, tell me what's wrong with this. And so like I said, I apply that to if someone shows me a song or a picture or a dress, you know, you can apply it to any context. And I'm not going to be mean. I'm not going to say, this is terrible, you should give up. You know what? That's not constructive either. So I want to help. You know, if someone asks for my opinion on something, I want to help. That's why they ask for my opinion. Saying it's perfect is not helping at all. You're just giving them false confidence. So I don't want to keep repeating myself, but this applies to so many things in terms of lies, in terms of white lies. Was the food okay? Yes, it was perfect. I think unless you're in a superb restaurant, that is not often going to happen. There's always going to be something that you would have preferred, maybe slightly bigger portions or slightly less salt, you know? And, you know, when you're in a fancy restaurant, you want to be prim and proper and not rock the boat, right? And this is one reason why I don't go to fancy restaurants, is because I don't feel like I fit in that kind of environment where it's all very surface level and fake. And a big part of lies and deception and manipulating your persona or putting on a facade or something is social media. And it's one of the reasons why I don't use social media. I hate it so much. And the reason is, you know, if it's your average Joe, maybe this doesn't apply so much. But when you've got celebrities or influencers, quote unquote, which is such an Orwellian term. Don't like that. They have a brand to uphold, and you're never going to see them when they're having a shit, or they're hungover or something. They're going to be manipulating what you see so that you like them more, so that you follow them, so they're aspirational, right? And half of these people flexing their cash and their Lamborghinis, the cash isn't real, and the Lamborghinis are rented, so it's filling your mind with all of these false aspirations, which you don't need. You don't need that stuff. And I don't know why, but this is something I really don't understand, is just looking at people being rich. I don't understand why that's entertaining. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of them aren't actually as rich or as happy, more importantly, as they would have you believe. And this is just so normal. This is so accepted now. When I was a kid, this wasn't a thing that existed. You had, like, gossip magazines and stuff like that, which were kind of guilty of it as well, to a certain extent, but it wasn't shoved in your face all the time. And we didn't have things like filters and Photoshop and stuff to make even a picture of someone be able to be faked, So that's actually a big part of why I don't use social media. It's just because it's all a bunch of lies. It's all a bunch of crap that won't help you in the long run. And it actually makes you feel worse about yourself. Because look how happy everyone else is. And I've dealt with this myself. Look how happy everyone else is. Look how busy everyone is doing the things that they love doing and all this. That doesn't help you. It's never going to help you. It's never going to inspire you to be more like them. You're just going to feel bad that you aren't like them when the version of them that you're seeing isn't even real in the first place. It's psychotic. So obviously, politicians lie, which seems like it should be a crime or something, like a genuine crime, or there should be some kind of repercussions for that happening. But I've never seen that happen. No, I tell a lie. Bill Clinton lied about the whole Monica Lewinsky thing, and that had repercussions. Aside from that, I can't think of another politician who has lied about something who has, been taken out of office or something. That very rarely happens. My last attempt at trusting a politician was Barack Obama, when this is going back to like 2008 or 9 or something, where he said, and I will always remember him saying this, he said that by X date, whatever the date he proposed was, all the US troops are going to be out of the Middle East and that whole thing's going to be over, right? That date came, nothing happened, it was never mentioned again, and the reason why I really noticed that is because that sounds great. That sounds like where we shouldn't have even been there in the first place. And so when you say that, I'm like, yes, okay, I'm on board with that. I'm not a US voter or anything, but it puts him in my good books, let's say, as a politician, which again is not often. And that was a lie as well. A very obvious lie. But the media and news, it travels so fast that one lie quickly gets covered up by the next big story and then it's forgotten about. But I never forgot that, Mr. Obama. And as far as presidents go, he's pretty decent, I would say. But that was just like, okay, well, I don't trust you. I can never trust you again. Maybe slightly controversial, but during the most recent US elections between Trump and Kamala Harris, Trump said a bunch of things at the time, and it's not just me that feels this way, because I know a lot of people were swung by things that he was saying leading up to the election. I value politicians who don't create wars, who don't start wars, who don't invade other countries, who don't cause the deaths of innocent people, right? That's my priority when it comes to world leaders. If they do that, then fine. And it kind of occurred to me, again, maybe controversial, but at the time, while Trump was in power for 4 years, the US wasn't involved in any wars. There was no invasions, nothing. And he said, he was going to end the conflict in Ukraine within 24 hours, which I thought, okay, that's a bit optimistic, but, maybe it's 48 hours, maybe it's a week. And I was like, if I was in the US, I might have been swung based on the things he was saying. However, look at where we are now. The war in Ukraine is still going on. Nothing's really changed there. He swooped into Venezuela and abducted their president for whatever reason, maybe for the good or maybe for the bad, but that, I'm like, where the hell did that come from? You didn't mention that. And now the Iran thing, I'm like, you didn't mention that either. So it's just lie after lie after lie, especially with politicians. And, you know, if I was a US citizen and I had voted for Donald Trump, I would be very, very deeply disappointed with my decision. As I think a lot of Americans are right now. Someone said once, if there was a way, and I don't know why this isn't the case, but it's a really good idea. If there was a way for you to put in your vote based on what a politician says, and then over time, like 3 months, 6 months, if they've gone back on what they said, they just blatantly lied, then you should be able to retract your vote and go, no, I'm taking that back now because you haven't lived up to what you said you were going to do. But in democracy, that doesn't happen, which I don't really understand. Another big lie, perhaps. I think that's a really good idea, because then that would actually make politicians go, maybe we shouldn't lie, because there are actually repercussions if we do. So, to end, there is freedom in truth. Again, it might be difficult, it might not be what you want to say or what you want to hear. The truth can be uncomfortable a lot of the time, but if you exclusively tell the truth, as I've explained, in every situation that you can reasonably do so, then you're going to have a free conscience. You're going to have a free mind. You're not going to have all of this like compartment in your mind of all the little lies that you've told recently that you need to maintain. And maintaining lies has got to be exhausting, like all the time, every day, and again, lying to yourself and convincing yourself of lies that you know are lies, but you convince yourself so much that it becomes your truth, quote unquote. There's no freedom in that. There is absolutely no freedom in hiding from reality. That's crazy to me. That's how people end up in mental asylums. Don't lie if you can avoid it. If it's a life or death situation, you crack on, you do what you got to do. It won't improve anyone's life, lying or being lied to. It doesn't do any good. Even though it might be, as we've discussed, a white lie, trying to protect someone's feelings, etc. If you protect someone's feelings too much, they're not going to be able to handle life when it gets hard, when the uncomfortable truth whacks them in the face eventually. It's going to destroy them. Always be honest. Always tell the truth. And when someone does lie, that gives you, in my opinion, that gives you a free pass to just not trust them ever again. Or at least they're going to have to work really hard with like evidence of something for you to trust them again. For me to trust them. You don't have to think like me, obviously, but that's just how I see it. So I hope this has been some interesting food for thought for you. If this has been relatable or inspirational or whatever to you, then please subscribe. And so you can keep up with other thoughts that I put out there. If you think I'm entirely wrong, then by all means, let me know in the comments. Anyway, moving on.